Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be able to talk to this gentleman. He's always got that great smile. If I ask him where he got it from, it's somebody in his family. I promise you. His name is Steve Wyche. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Cedric, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
All right. Was it on your mom's side or your dad's side that you got that traditional look? You know what I mean?
I got my father's smile, but everything else I got from my mother.
That's what God will do for you. Okay. Speaking of your family, let's talk about it. You grew up in which city and you attended the same school that my son graduated from in Columbia, Mississippi, Missouri, uh, the Missouri Tigers. And also you went to a HBCU. How
Yep.
did that happen? And what did your family say to you when they say, Steve, what are you going to do with your life?
Well, my family, both my parents are from Virginia. My mother's from Southwest Virginia, outside of Roanoke. My father's from Hampton, Virginia. But I grew up between Minneapolis and St. Louis. Born in Minneapolis, about third, fourth grade, moved to St. Louis. And that's how I ended up University of Missouri playing football, starting there. I was on the team, wasn't any good. Um, and so after my second season there, my second fall there, decided to transfer to an HBCU. And since both my parents went to Hampton, I applied to both Hampton and Howard. But Howard's football coach, Willie Jeffries, the legend, got in touch with me, convinced me to come to Howard. But by the time I got there with the transfer rules back in the day, I wouldn't be able to play for another year. So I kind of lost my stinger and decided just to become a student, um, and went to Howard. And Cedric, I think it's great because I have the experience to be able to, attend a PWI and then HBCU. So I've got a basis of comparison when I talk about HBCUs and things like that to really know and make people understand how important they are to the culture and to American history.
Wow, that is truly amazing. Now, when you was at Missouri, was they in the Big Eight or were they in the Big 12
Oh
then?
no, they were in the Big Eight. That's back when Oklahoma, and Nebraska were running things. Back when Oklahoma had Troy Aikman,
Yeah,
and then the quarterback who came in behind Jamel Holloway and
yeah.
loaded with Tony Casillas and Brian Bosworth, and Nebraska had Turner Gill and players like that. Oklahoma State had Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas. So no, it was the real deal. That's when the Big Eight was rocking.
Well, I went to school in Oklahoma, and there was a young man that lived right around the corner from me. He talked a lot of trash, and he went to Missouri. His name was Eric Drain. Okay.
Drano's my guy. Drano, Drano was our starting running back, number 33, Eric
Yeah,
Drain. Oh no, I know Drano well.
yeah, Drain. And believe it or not, here in Oklahoma, his grandson is following in his footsteps. So, and he's from a town. We have what we call black towns in Oklahoma, and the town was called Tatum's, Oklahoma. That's where he's from.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know Drano settled there. He's from outside of DC in Maryland area. And yeah, he is a talker.
Yeah,
Drano could definitely chat with all of
yeah,
them.
yeah. He let you know. And then another person I knew that was there at Missouri, and he played at Oklahoma was Jackie Ship. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, so definitely knows a lot of people. But the reason why I'm doing this because everyone has to have a humble beginning. You have to start somewhere in order to make it. Our families, we grew up in a time period where we didn't have no, definitely was no internet
Nope.
and cable TV. Well, good luck with that because your parents weren't going to be able to get that because they couldn't afford it. Basically, you know what I mean. So what happens is a guy like you goes to school and studies broadcasting and learns everything. And you just take your time and doors are open for you. But also, I believe also you're a writer too as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I graduated with a print journalism degree. I was a print journalist for 15 or so years.
And you had a chance to see some of the legends that the writers before all this internet stuff came along and everybody had, before computers, you had to have a tablet, be able to write, and get the job done. So what was it like for you to get to that levels, Steve?
Well, I mean, it was a lot of hard work, and a lot of treating people well. So after I graduated from Howard, I worked at the Richmond, Virginia Times-Dispatch newspaper. Was there for almost 2 years and went to the Miami Herald for 9 years, where I ended up covering professional boxing. Don King moved his operation from New York to the Fort Lauderdale area, so I got in that way and had a lot of big stories to cover. Then I covered the Dolphins and the Miami Heat. And then I got hired to the Washington Post where I covered the NBA. And that's when Michael Jordan came out of retirement. It wasn't the last dance, it was the final dance. See, he forgot that chapter in the documentary. He didn't want no part of that. So, so I covered Michael Jordan in the NBA and the Wizards and things like that. And then I went to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution because an old sports editor of mine in Miami took over the sports section there and hired me there. And I covered the Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
And from there were some big stories that happened, which allowed the NFL Network to come tapping at my door in 2008. And I've been there since then. So that's when I made the transition from print to broadcast.
One thing that I got to ask you, and it was the most crucial time in the game, the Colin Kaepernick situation. Tell us
Mhm.
about your connection on that.
Well, that was in 2016. And that was, the backdrop of it was, Cedric, Obama administration had just ended. It was Hillary versus Trump.
Yep.
It's each party nominee. So we know how divisive that became, right? We know how much we were in the gutter after being in a really good place as a society for 8 years. It quickly turned into the gutter, a lot of backdrop. Plus, that was the summer when it really became, when camera phones became super important because we had a lot of unarmed black people getting shot by police and whatever, and all of these high tense situations. So again, the backdrop was crazy. And then Colin Kaepernick in a third preseason game decided not to stand for the national anthem. He had not kneeled yet. He was seated. It was the 49ers when he was a quarterback for them against the Packers. And I noticed I actually got a phone call from a colleague of mine who was speaking to an executive with the 49ers and said, if somebody's here, keep an eye on Cap because we don't think he stood for the national anthem the first couple games, but he's been injured. So we don't know what's going on. This was the first game he was healthy, so that's why I was up in San Francisco covering this preseason game. And so I paid attention to it, saw he wasn't standing, and then went back and remembered the backdrop of the time we were in and how Colin, who was a very quiet guy, became very active on social media, speaking out against these shootings of unarmed black people. So I put two and two together, spoke to Cap about it after the game in a one-on-one interview, and hence we have the big story when he came out and said he decided not to stand because he did not want to honor a flag in a country that gave law enforcement officials paid leave while black people were being shot and dying in the street.
Wow. That is an incredible story. And I want to wrap that part up by saying this. The most important thing that you had and you had to have was your editor's support to allow you to print the story.
Well, that part was a journey because Cedric, the first at the time I was working with the NFL Network, which I am now. So what are the first three letters of that?
National,
NFL,
not
right?
or National Football League.
Right. So I didn't have a story. I didn't have a camera, I should say. This was a written story, right? So this is where the print journalistic chops really allowed me to do this. And so now you have one of 32. You have a starting quarterback for the NFL or a quarterback for the NFL taking a political stance so publicly. And this has never happened before,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, I alerted my editors at the time what was going on. We had to go through a couple channels.
Yep.
But I mean, I made sure I went back to journalism 101. I got the 49ers management and ownership's perspective after talking to Kaepernick because this was going to be an explosive story.
Mm-hmm.
And my editors at the NFL, after running through everything they had to do, said, let's go. Let's go ahead and put the story out. So it hit the internet that morning because it was a West Coast game. And the blowback and the fallout missed the point of the story. I felt it was important to state why he did this. The reaction was more so what he did.
Yeah.
And that's when it really became the inflamed controversy that it became.
Yeah. And I asked you that question, Steve, because sometimes you can go write a story and you look up and they make a couple little edits or something like,
Sure.
and you're sitting there saying, I didn't say all that. I mean,
Correct.
and I know because I've been doing this a while. I want to commend you for what you're doing, and look where you are now in your NFL journey. I've heard about you talking with Sean Payton and how he coached and how he came from Eastern Illinois. Tony Romo came from the same school, And the interesting story is, I know he's with the Broncos now, and before Peyton was with the New Orleans Saints, but before he was New Orleans Saints, he was a part of the Dallas Cowboy organization
Yeah.
with Bill Parcells. Wasn't that crazy?
Well, Sean's had a journey. And the story you're talking about, I did for HBCUGO. And, I'm doing some work with HBCUGO this year, which is important, broadcasting Black college games, telling stories of the great history of our Black colleges, which is important to me. And so, along with doing my NFL Network main job, this is something else I'm doing. It's very important. So, I interviewed Sean on HBCUGO because when he was playing quarterback back in 1984 for Eastern Illinois, they had this high flying offense, but they could not catch
Yeah.
up to this tiny school in Itta Mississippi,
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi Valley State, which is scoring 60 points a game with Jerry Rice and Willie Totten. To make a long story short, now Sean, still coaching the Broncos, he did it with the Saints. They use a personnel package called the Cooley package, named after Archie Cooley, the coach at Mississippi Valley State. And so Sean, who was the quarterback's coach with Tony Romo and everybody for the Cowboys before he went to the Saints, really appreciated what Black college football did to incorporate some ingenious ideas that he still uses today in pro football. So that's where that conversation with Sean came in the interview with HBCU Go. But yes, he was with the Cowboys. He's one of the best offensive minds that there is, and I respect him and having the historical knowledge and to use some of the great legendary coaching in his game today.
That is amazing, truly. Now you're in Memphis, and
Yes.
of course, what game are you doing this weekend?
So it's the Procter and Gamble Southern Heritage Classic. It's Alcorn State against Arkansas Pine Bluff. It'll air at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on HBCU Go. So this is an important game. It used to be a long time play between Tennessee State and Jackson State, and that changed a few years ago. But this should be a very, very exciting game. Alcorn's looking for its first win. Arkansas Pine Bluff's got one, but they've played some tough teams. I mean, they played Texas Tech. They played Mississippi State. So this will be a real identity kind of revealer for either team to see how good they are and how much work they need to do.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now because I want everybody to be able to go online to the website, and you should be able to see when you go there, you can watch. And of course, the first week in August, well, the last week in August, first two games, you guys opened up, you did Fayetteville State and Benedict College. That was in Columbia. And then also you did Hampton against Jackson State.
Yep.
And then we look at here, Alcorn, Alabama A&M, Tuskegee, and Central State. Morehouse and Howard University, and Miles College and Alabama State. Talk about some of these games and what it's been like as well.
Well, I did the Miles College Alabama State game, and it's Miles College, a Division II school against Alabama State, a 1AA program in the SWAC, a really good program coached by Eddie Robinson Jr., no relation to the great Eddie Robinson, but they're one of the best teams that we're seeing in Black college football. And you see some of these other games in there. So last week we had Hampton versus Howard, which was great for me to call that game because, as I mentioned, my parents went to Hampton. I'm a Howard graduate. Hampton had beaten Howard 8 straight times. Howard finally snapped the streak last week. They blew Hampton off the field in a game in D.C. And then you're looking at some of the other games. This week we've got, prior to the game I'm doing, the Southern Heritage Classic, you've got Alabama State at Florida A&M. As I mentioned, Alabama State is really, really good. But this Florida A&M team, which is trying to find itself, they're always a challenge. Look where the game's being played in Tallahassee. So it's a home game for FAMU. So again, a big test that you can watch on HBCU Go before you come to our game, which will be on the Grio and HBCU Go and on Prime Video, the Alcorn State Arkansas Pine Bluff game.
Now, what was your? I had to ask you this question because going to a Missouri Tiger game, and then going to of course, Howard University game. You have to prepare when you go to a Howard University HBCU game. You just can't just show up like you do when you go to a Missouri Tiger game. They just go in there and have a seat and whatever. But no. You half the time you're not going to be really watching the game because you're going to be so busy hanging out with your family and friends. Is that right, Steve?
Cedric, when you go to a black college football game, it's not just a game, it's an event,
Yes.
right? And so, when I was at Missouri, we're playing in front of 55, 60,000 fans and things like this. So they're pre-gaming. I mean, they're doing their thing ahead of time as well, but tailgating, having fun, having a few libations and getting ready for the game. But at a black college game, you got fashion, right? You got people showing up looking good.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the bands. Like every time I see these big things, oh, here's the best marching band in the country, and they don't have an HBCU, that goes completely out the window. Those rankings go out the window. You got to have black college bands in there because they tell so much of the story about our history and everything. And just the rivalries, because, when I was in Missouri, our big rival at the time was Kansas. And that was a hated rivalry because it goes back to historical ramifications. With
Yes.
black colleges, you have your rivalries, but there's also this understanding of love, right? So Hampton and Howard, the real HU, blah, 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 that's a rivalry. But we love one another because we respect the HBCU journey, right? We understand the HBCUs were created because at one time in this country, black folks weren't allowed to go to school with white people.
Yeah.
And so we understand what our forebears and our grandfathers and our historical figures like Thurgood Marshall and Doug Wilder and Kamala Harris, what they had to go through for us to be where we are. So there's just this really incredible thread of love that goes through students and teachers and people involved with HBCUs that's a little different than when you go to a school at a PWI.
Wow. Well, listen, folks, we have been blessed today to talk to Steve Wyche. He is the announcer. And I was just watching, you guys, your team is phenomenal. You do a great job. What about next week, man? Are you going to do the Alabama A&M game, or are you doing Central State and Fort Valley? Where are you going there?
So next week I actually am off. It's one of the few weeks where I will not be doing a game. Our crew this week with Tolly Carr and Nia Simone is going to be great for this game. I'm off, and then I'm right back at it. That Virginia State Bowie State game. Don't let me say Bowie. The Bowie State game. I'll be at that game. That's going to be a huge CIAA matchup, and I'm looking forward to getting back on track for that one.
And that North Carolina Central Florida A&M game,
Big game.
the Eagles tore up A&T on last week. Woo! My
They sure
friend
did.
Donald Ware is the announcer. He's a good friend of mine, is the announcer for that one, and he does that one. Then you got homecoming, Southern and Prairie View. Woo! You know what? You're gonna have to work out, because I know you, brother. Going to them games, they bring out the food, and you really don't even have to go with it. You go out there. I'm pretty sure when you was at Howard, you saw one of your boys over there tailgating, and they said, "Hey, Steve, come over here. I got some ribs waiting for you."
That's all
All
you got to
running
do.
back.
As long as you bring something, don't come empty-handed, right? You got to bring a little something. You got to bring some sausages, some ribs, something over there to make sure to add to the pot. It's a potluck party at an HBCU game.
Wow. And are you going to do the Vegas Classic with Jackson State and Grambling
I'm
State?
I'm not. I will not be at that game.
Oh,
So, but I know our folks, who will be, John Kelly, James Hadnot. I know that whole crew will be ready to rock and roll with that one.
man, but you guys make it exciting. And because sometimes there are blowouts in games, and you can go ahead and just, ad lib and just tell stories, because you got to be able to do that as an announcer.
Sure.
But I close out, and I got to ask you the ultimate question. Byron Allen, your
Yeah.
definition.
I'm sorry, the question was?
My question to you is Byron Allen, your definition of what he means to you and what he's done for this game.
To me, he's what we call a servant leader, right? He's somebody who understands the missions of HBCUs, the causes of HBCUs, the histories of HBCUs, and most importantly, the futures of HBCUs. And here's a black entrepreneur, was best known for being a comedian, still doing that part of it, but he's reaching out and reaching back, and he's bringing people along with him, not only to help add to his empire, but help those people become better citizens, to become better broadcasters, to become better producers. It's not a lot. I look working at a major network. I don't see a lot of me
Yeah,
behind the scenes.
yeah,
I don't see a lot of me in front of the scenes who aren't former players. Well, that's what Byron is allowing his network to do, is to staff it up with people of all races now, but to give people opportunities to reach their goals. And that's when I talk about him being a servant leader, how important it is for him to understand the greater purpose of it all because right now in this country and so many times we tend to look in the mirror instead of looking out the window.
Well, Steve, thank you for your time. Man, I can't wait to check you out. And one thing I say about download the app, and the great thing about this whole platform, it is free. You know
Yes.
what I mean? You can pull out your cell phone and you can download the app and put it on there and watch it. And the great thing that you guys are able to do is for those families who can't get there to watch their son or daughter in the band, or they can't get there for the game, but they can pull it up on the phone and watch it and be a part of it just as well. So shout outs, HBCUGO. Thank you so much, Steve. You got a closing comment you want to share before we wrap it up?
No, Cedric, I just appreciate you taking the time because you just heard me talk about being a servant leader, and you using your platform to spread the word is important, especially like you said, people can download that HBCUGO.TV app, get all these games plus other great programming that deals with mainly Black colleges and Black folks. So I appreciate you, Cedric.
Thank you so much. And a special thank you to the Front Page Firm for making it happen. We got more coming up. Thank you, Steve Wyche, for being our guest here on the Cedric Bailey Radio Show.